But most people who go to school for 8 years are doctors and lawyers, but I went to school for 8 years to be a teacher. I didn't know what I wanted to be when I grew up. I thought I wanted to be an athletic trainer. So I started off my college education at Ohio University to be an athletic trainer, and I did not, as much as he was a nice man, my guidance counselor did not tell me that you have to get into the program. And so I was delayed getting into the program to start with, so that made my undergrad a 5-year stint instead of a 4. And then I couldn't find a job that I wanted, and I kind of followed a roommate to East Tennessee State for a year. They didn't have athletic training as a major, so I was working as a high school athletic trainer, but I had to declare some sort of major. And so I was like, well, I guess I'll do education. That's a good backup plan. And you guys, I lived on $5,000 a year. That was how much they paid me. I got free college and $5,000 a year for rent and all the things. So because that's not a lot of money, I would substitute teach on days I didn't have class. And while I was substitute teaching, I was like, oh, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. This is the job I'm supposed to have. So I've told you guys this before. I called my mom. I said, Mom, I'm going to be a teacher. She's like, yeah, I know. I'm like, what do you mean you know? She's like, I have always known you're going to be a teacher. I'm like, well, why didn't you tell me that sooner? I just got a 5-year degree that means nothing. So I ended up back at OU to go to grad school. I didn't love it in Tennessee. I didn't love being that far away from my family. And they had an athletic training major. I had to take athletic training classes there to work as an athletic trainer. So I was working as a high school athletic trainer. I was getting my degree in athletic. I was taking classwork for my athletic training because I had to, but I knew I wanted to be a teacher. So now, because at this point I'm in years 7 and 8 of college, and I'm starting to get over it. I loved the first 5 years of college. I loved my undergrad, but by the time I got to grad school, I was tired. I was tired of being in school. I was tired of writing papers. I was tired of being broke all the time. And but I had to do it, to finish. And had I realized I wanted to be a teacher when I was in high school, I would have been a French teacher. Like, had I had my druthers, I would have been a French teacher because I love languages. I love traveling. My French teacher took us all over the place. That's what I would have chosen had I started from scratch as a teacher. But at this point, I was like, what gets me out of here the fastest? And because my undergrad was in physiology, it was health. So I became a health teacher. And it's funny because that last year, I did not want to go back. I didn't want to go to college anymore. I was tired of it. I was over it, but I knew I had to do it because if I didn't do it, I wouldn't be a teacher and I can't get a job. So I was like, I guess I got to go back one more year. And I finished and I got my actual degree in athletic training, but I never actually got my degree in education because I would have had to write another 8-page paper that 5 people are going to read and then nothing. I was like, what's the point of all that work? But you know what? As much as I was tired of it, as much as I was over it those last couple years, as much as I didn't want to be there anymore, I look back now and what a blessing. Most teachers go to school for their 4 to 5 year undergrad degree. Then they get out and they have to pay to go to grad school. And while they're teaching, those first couple of years of teaching are hard. And while they're doing that, they're also taking grad classes. And because of my circuitous path, I feel like sometimes this is my life. Maybe Family Circus, remember Family Circus, the cartoon, and Little Billy? This is what my life, I feel like, has been. Instead of he could go straight across to his mom, he takes this whole big, long, circuitous route. I feel like that's me. I feel like that has been my life. It's not a straight shot. I don't know what I want to be. I often feel like my life has been I'm driving. Anita and Jill and another friend, Betsy, and I were driving a couple weeks ago to a winery, and we were so busy talking, I went right by the exit. And it was 7.5 miles to the next turnaround, so I had to drive 15 miles out of my way to get off the exit, and then I missed the turn, and then we had to turn around at some correctional institute. Thank God we didn't get pulled over. So I feel like that's my life. I've missed the turn off, and now I've got to go extra and turn around, and I have felt many times like that has been my life. But as I look at it, I'm so grateful. In Kentucky, teachers, there's like levels of pay. And so like level 3 is your bachelor's degree, level 2 is 1 master's degree, level 3 is master's plus X number of hours. Well, because I went to grad school for 3 years, I started teaching at the highest pay salary I possibly could. It's what's called rank 1. I could get 5 more degrees and not get paid any more money in Kentucky. That's how it works. And so like, because of the circuitous route I took in my life, I've made $7,000 easily a year more my whole career, which that's a lot of money. And because of in Kentucky, to retire, you get a bump at 55. Had I started teaching, had I gone to a 4-year program, I would have to teach till I'm like 31 or 32 years. So for me to get to 55, I have to teach 29 years, which is only this year and 2 more. And I think to myself, man, would I have 6 more years in me? I don't know if I'd have 6 more years in me. So I'm gonna get that, as long as this year's kids don't kill me, I'm gonna get that bump by staying only 2 more extra years instead of having to stay like 5 extra years. And I think like, had I been a French teacher, there's not nearly the need for French teachers as there is for health teachers. I wouldn't have gotten a job at Ludlow. Ludlow doesn't teach French, we're too small. And so when I look back, as much as I did not love the path that God took me on and the amount of time that it took me, I see that God's hand was in it the whole time. Now, I don't know if God tried to tell me to be a teacher at the get-go and I ignored him. That's totally possible. I don't know. I don't know if I had to take the long way because I'm hard-headed or if that was God's plan all along. But like, I know that I physically have more money. I had way less stress my first few years teaching. And I'm a healthier person because I teach health all the time. When you have to tell people to eat right all the time, then you start to be like, I should probably eat right. Like, who knows how unhealthy I'd be if I was a French teacher, you know? So like, it's been really good for me. That long circuitous route was really good for me. God used that time to prepare me. God used that time. I worked for a cheerleading company during that time because I was in college forever. I got a job at that cheerleading company because I was an athletic trainer. And now I've been a cheer coach this is going on my 27th year of coaching cheerleading. Like, I don't know if I would have gotten a cheer coaching job had I not had that experience. Like, so much of my life I see that God was preparing me and using that time to prepare me, that circuitous route, preparing me. I mean, have any of you ever felt like that? Like you missed the off-ramp to the opportunity you wanted? Like God is taking you on this windy road, and you're like, can we just get there? Are we there yet? You know, you're the little kid in the back of the car. Are we there yet? Why am I on this road? I often feel that way. Like, are we there yet? God, like, come on. Why do I have to wait so long? Well, sometimes God uses our waiting to prepare us. God uses that waiting. He is using that waiting period to equip us in something. And one of the stories, one of my favorite Hebrew Bible stories is a story of, I call him Technicolor Joseph. So there's basically 2 Josephs in the Bible, Jesus' stepdad, and then who I call Technicolor Joseph. So you got Abraham, if you guys remember Abraham. Abraham had 1 son, and that was Isaac. Isaac had 2 sons, Jacob and Esau. Jacob gets renamed Israel in a whole twist of fate with God. And Israel has 12 sons. And he got tricked, long story short, into marrying these 2 sisters. He really loved Rachel, and he got tricked into marrying her stupid sister. No, she wasn't stupid. Her sister, Leah, poor Leah. And so Rachel couldn't have kids, and Leah could pop out babies like it was nobody's business. And then Rachel tried to give him her slave, like, here, have another baby mama, like, have some more kids with her and I'll count them as mine. And then finally Rachel got pregnant herself. And her first son was Joseph. So because Rachel was Israel's favorite wife, of course Joseph was Israel's favorite son. And he was not quiet about his favoritism. If you've ever been in a family where it's very obvious who the favorite is, in this family, it was very obvious who the favorite was. It says in Genesis 37, Israel loved Joseph more than all his sons because Joseph had been born in his old age. And so he made Joseph this special technicolor robe with long sleeves. And Joseph's brothers saw that their father loved him more than any of them, and they hated him. And they couldn't speak to him on friendly terms. This makes me think that Joseph was a turd. He was a spoiled brat. Daddy gave him this awesome coat, this luxurious coat, and I bet he walked around and sauntered like, hey, look what Dad gave me. Suckers, what Dad ever gave you. And so they hated him because he was a punk, right? He loved to rub their faces in how awesome, how much Dad loved him and not them. And so then one day, Joseph has this dream. He has this dream, and he runs and tells his brothers, because he's such a little pipsqueak, and they hated him even more. He says, oh, guys, listen to this dream I had. We were all tying grain into these bundles out in the field, and suddenly mine stood up, and it was super tall, while you guys were holding your bundles, and you all gathered around my bundle, and you bowed down to it. So basically, he's saying, I had this dream where you guys are all going to bow down to me. Isn't that awesome? And his brothers were like, what the? Oh, you think you're going to be a king and rule over us? So they hated him even more. And so one day, the brothers are all out in the field working, and the little snot-nosed kid is home, and Dad's like, hey, go check on your brothers. And he's like, I get to go check and see if they're working. I'm going to come home and tattle on them. And so he goes out to check on them, and because he's wearing this big robe, it reminds me of like those big purple robes with the fur. That's what I think of, So he comes sauntering out to the field in his robe, and they see him coming because, he's wearing the robe. And they're like, what are we going to do with this guy? We're going to teach him a lesson. We should just kill him. And Reuben, who's the oldest, Reuben's like, hold on. I agree he's a jerk. I agree he needs to be taken down a peg. Maybe we shouldn't kill him. How about we just here's a well. Let's just throw him in this well for a while and teach him a lesson. And so they're like, all right, fine, Reuben, we'll do that. So they throw him in the well to teach him a lesson. And then Reuben leaves, and he's trying to okay, how can I talk them out of killing him? Well, he probably deserves to die. That would be bad. So how can I talk them out of this? But while Reuben is gone, trying to figure out how he's going to fix this problem, a slave caravan comes along. And better idea. Instead of killing him, let's sell him as a slave. We'll pocket the money. Dad will never know. We'll take his coat, and we'll rip it, and we'll put some blood on it. We'll say to Dad that he's dead, and we'll pocket the money. And so that's what they do. They sell him to a slave caravan. He gets taken away, and he's sold to this farmer named Potiphar. And he's like a rancher, big spread. Well, Joseph, as much as he was a jerk, he learned a lot from his dad. His dad was a really good farmer and manager of people. And so Joseph, even though he's only 17, he quickly rises up within the ranks of the slaves. And Potiphar ends up putting him in charge of everything. He becomes the number 2 on the ranch, even though he's still a slave. And he's got it pretty good. Except, Joe's a good-looking guy. And Potiphar's wife is like, hey. And so she's like, hey, why don't we, He's like, no, man, I cannot do that. I might get killed. I'll lose my job. I am not messing with Potiphar's wife. And she, typical women scorn. She's like, oh, yeah, you don't want to? Well, fine. So she traps him one day, and he manages to escape, but he wiggles out of his shirt or coat or whatever he's wearing, and he gets away from her. But she's mad. So she goes to Potiphar, and she's like, he tried to force himself on me. Here's his shirt to prove that he was in my room. And Potiphar's like, crap, he's a great worker, but I can't have him here if he's going to be doing this to my wife. So Potiphar sends him to prison in Egypt. And in prison, even in its prison, he does still show his leadership skills. He works his way. He ends up getting a job in the prison, and he ends up working his way up the prison ranks until he has a pretty cushy job. Now, he's still a prisoner, He doesn't have freedom, but he still has worked his way up into a position of leadership in the prison. And he is become known for being a dream interpreter, even though the dream that he interpreted to his brothers seems like it can't possibly happen. Let's think about that dream for a minute. He said to his brothers, I had a dream that you're all going to bow down to me. And here he is in prison. He's probably thinking, well, I got that one wrong. Surely I didn't interpret that dream the right way. But as people come to him, he can interpret their dreams in a way that makes sense. So there's this one day, these two guys get thrown in prison, and they both have dreams that are similar. And the winemaker has this dream, and he tells Joe, and Joe says, oh, your dream says you're going to get reinstated. You're going to get out of prison and get back to Pharaoh's whatever. You're going to be his wine taster. And the guy's like, oh, man, thanks. How can I repay you? He's like, hey, when you get back to Pharaoh, would you tell him that I'm awesome and see if he'll let me go? And the winemaker's like, bet, man, I'll do that. And so the guy gets reinstated, but he forgets all about Joseph. And Joseph's probably sitting there thinking, okay, he got reinstated. All right, anytime now, they're going to come and let me out. Anytime now, this crappy situation is going to end for me. I'm going to be done with this place. And for 3 more years, he sat in prison. Joseph was either a slave or in prison for 12 years. 12 years. He thought he was supposed to rule over his brothers, and yet he was put in this low position. And I can't help but think that God knew that he needed to be humbled a bit. Remember, he loved to go to his brothers and be like, check out my coat. He needed to be taken down a peg. And he also needed to learn some leadership skills he probably wouldn't have learned under his dad, because his dad coddled him. And so God was using that 12-year period to refine Joseph. Joseph had some great qualities, but he also had some bad qualities. And in the Bible, they talk about fire and metal. And when you put metal in the fire, it burns out the impurities. And it doesn't hurt the metal, it makes it stronger. You don't want to go to battle with a weak sword. You want to go to battle with a sword that's been forged in the fire and strengthened. And God knew that Joe was going to have to go to battle. And he couldn't do it in his 17-year-old state. And he needed an education that he wouldn't get at home. And also, he needed to be put in a place where he could help. So then eventually, back to our story, Pharaoh has this dream and nobody can interpret it. And finally the winemaker's like, oh yeah, there's this guy in prison. He's like super good at interpreting dreams. You should call him up. And so Pharaoh calls him up, he tells him the dream. Joe says, okay, here's what that dream means. We're going to have 7 years of abundance. 7 years where everything is awesome. And then we're going to have 7 years where everything is terrible. We're going to have a drought, a famine for 7 years. And Pharaoh's like, oh man, that sounds terrible. And he's like, man, what do you think I should do about it? And Joe's like, well, I mean, if it was me, I would build some storehouses. And for 7 years, I would put half in the storehouses so that when we have 7 years of nothingness, we can eat. Pharaoh's like, that's a good idea, man. I'm going to put you in charge of it. So he not only springs Joe from prison, but he makes him the number 2. Here he's again going from the bottom to elevation because he's proven that he's got these skills. And so 7 years, everything is awesome, and then this famine hits. And they get into year 2 of the famine, and Israel and his family are starving. It's hit them hard like everyone else. And they're like, well, we hear that Pharaoh's got some food. Let's go see if Pharaoh will give us some food. So he sends some of the brothers. The brothers walk into the throne room, and here's Joseph. Now, he is dressed like an Egyptian. He's standing in a position of authority, and the brothers figured he was sold off figured he's a slave somewhere. So they don't recognize him. He's out of context. They haven't seen him in 20 years, and he's dressed like an Egyptian. So they come, but he recognizes them. They come up, and they're like, hey, we need some food. He's like, all right. And so there's this whole big, long story. He gives them food, but plants valuables, so they get arrested, and he asks for his brother to be brought back to him and all this stuff. So at the end of the story, all the brothers come into the throne room. And Joe's like, okay, I'm going to tell him who I am. And here's the story. He says, come here, guys. Bring it in. And Joseph says to his brothers, and they come in, he's like, I am Joseph, your brother, the brother you sold into slavery in Egypt. And of course, they were probably like, oh, snap. He's alive, and he's probably going to kill us because we sold him into slavery. They're probably thinking, look what we did to him, and now he's in a position to help us. He's probably going to say tough. But Joe says, don't be sad. Don't be angry with yourselves that you sold me. God sent me ahead of you to save lives. He says, this famine has been in the land for 2 years, and there's going to be 5 more years of it. 5 more years without plowing or harvesting. God sent me ahead of you to make sure that we would all have descendants on the earth to save your lives in this amazing way. It wasn't you who sent me here, it was God. Now, did the brothers have evil intent? Heck yeah, they did. But God was using that time. Had Joseph stayed home, he wouldn't have learned the lessons he learned. Had Joseph stayed home, he would have been starving with the rest of them, at the mercy of Pharaoh. But God let Joseph's brothers, I imagine Joseph's brothers meant the harm, and God went like this. All right, I'm going to let this happen so that I can bring something awesome out of it. And so Joe had to go to prison and be sold into slavery. But at the end of it, he was able to save his entire family. Not only did they get saved, but Pharaoh was so grateful to Joe that he's like, how can I repay you? And Joe said, how about my whole family comes? It was like, I don't know, 75 or something at the time. How about my whole family comes and you just give us a good place to live? And so Pharaoh's like, cool, where do you want? You pick. Anywhere in my kingdom. And Joe's like, that place looks nice. Pharaoh's like, cool, that's your space. And Pharaoh gave him all this lush place to live and his family, and they lived there for hundreds of years in prosperity because of Joe's going to prison. Some of us are put on that circuitous route, and it feels like God has forgotten us. It feels like God has left us. We can't understand why we're taking this long road, and it could be that we have lessons to learn on that road. It could be that God is positioning us for something that's going to be awesome. Something that we wouldn't have the ability to do if we'd taken the way we wanted. So if you're in a season of waiting, if you're in the season of the circuitous route that seems to have no off-ramp, don't get mad. Go to God. Talk to him. And then shut up and listen. Because God loves to talk to us. And he loves when we come and talk to him. He loves to hear that, but also he has things to say to us. A lot of us go to God and we say, thank you, Jesus, and we list all the things we're grateful for, and we say, here are the list of things I need. Thanks, God, see you, bye. And we don't actually sit and talk to him. We need to cultivate in our lives a regular time where we sit in the quiet and we wait. And I'm going to tell you, at first, if you're like, I don't hear anything, then sit longer. Ask him. Say, God, can you help me hear from you? Because I can't hear from you. I hear this like, God told me this. I don't understand that. I didn't understand that for a long time. And then I said to God, God, I want to be able to hear you. Would you help me? And he did. Now, there are still plenty of times when I say, God, what should I do about this? And I don't hear anything. Where I say, God, should I do this thing? I'm looking for a yes or no. And he's like, I love you. I'm like, yeah, that's great. Should I do this? And he doesn't give me an answer. And then there are times I say, God, I've got this situation, and I'll pour my heart out about it. And then I'll sit back and listen, and then I'll have an idea of how to solve it. Then I'm like, oh, that's going to work. Or I'll hear a song that answers a question. Or I'll pick up the Bible and I'll be like, turn a page in the Bible. I'm like, oh, that's what I needed to hear right now. We have to cultivate, these seasons of waiting, they're not wasted. They're for God to work in our lives, for God to capture our hearts, for God to prepare us so that we're ready when that season of abundance comes, when that awesomeness comes, we're prepared for it. But we can't skip through. We're impatient. We're like kids. Are we there yet? Come on. And God's like, just come sit with me. Just come talk to me. Trust me. Trust that I am guiding you. Trust that I am protecting you. Maybe God's protecting you from something. Maybe the season of wait is so he can deal with some giants on the other side. Like, trust the season of waiting. Talk to God and learn to listen. Use that season to learn to listen to God. So I dare you this week to identify one skill, habit, or character trait that you can intentionally develop during your season of waiting. Maybe it's 15 minutes of quiet time with God. Maybe it's 15 minutes of reading the Bible. Maybe it's praying before you eat. Maybe it's praying to God before you go and ask somebody for advice. That's something I've had to learn to do. Like when I have a problem, I immediately want to ask someone for advice. And God's like, how about you ask me for advice first? I'm like, oh yeah, that's a good idea. Spend 15 minutes working on that thing at least 3 times a week, whatever it is. You could ask God, Lord, what are you trying to develop in me during this season? Or you could ask God, Lord, what kind of person are you preparing me to become? How are you using this time to prepare me? You could read, I don't know where that came from. Read Joseph's story. It's in Genesis 37. It starts in Genesis. It's a long story, but I love that story. So you can read Joe's story in Genesis 37 to engage someone else who is discouraged because they're waiting. You could remind them of one strength you've seen God developing in them. Be like, I know you're frustrated this season, but you know what I'm seeing? You're becoming much more patient. You know what I'm seeing? You're getting way better at like talking to God. You know what I'm seeing in this time? You're having way more time to spend with your grandkids in this time. I know you're in this waiting season, but you know what? It seems to me like you're really maturing and getting stronger. Encourage them in a way so they're like, okay, this season isn't a total waste. God doesn't waste our wait. He uses it. And all of God's children said? Amen. If you have not said yes to Jesus and you want to be part of our family, of the church family, of God's family, you come on down during this song.